it's not necessarily about the codified thing.
Oh, yeah. This is not just, Joey likes this one. No, these are not.
Cheryl.
I can. Yeah, that'd be hard. Yeah. Because we bought,
Or I can't, doesn't matter.
we bought pallets one time or something and never used things.
6 o'clock, actually 6:02, I will call the Streets and Sidewalks Committee to order. The first item is the traffic calming, and I'm going to hand this to Bob. Oh,
Yeah, I asked to have this on the agenda. I've been contacted multiple times by a resident on Bryn Mawr who is concerned about what I would just describe as shortcutting. People avoiding the Cotton Corners intersection 14 to 59 by coming down. I guess there's another road, I can't remember the name of it offhand, and then it goes at
Foxwood?
I
think it's Foxwood.
Foxwood,
And
okay.
then there's another that's Washington.
Right, and those come off
Off of 14 to
14,
Bryn
and then
Mawr.
they connect to Bryn Mawr. And Bryn Mawr goes all the way down to 59. A while back, the police put in one of those trailers that tells you what your miles per hour is, and I think did a little bit of, had a patrol car out there, and whenever we do that, it always helps. But then when the trailer goes away, the problems persist. So a while back, we talked about methods for slowing down traffic in some of the areas in our city, because there's been others. Highland is another place where sometimes people travel a little bit faster than they should. And I just think it's worth bringing up again what possible things we can do. One of the ideas I thought was maybe put up some signs, because I think there's only a couple of miles per hour signs on Bryn Mawr. I didn't realize the Foxwood Street is actually in the township, so we don't have any control over that. But I think, I guess because of the nature of the people who live there, there are some elderly people. It would be a real shame if someone got hurt. So I'm not sure exactly what to do, and I'm not proposing any specific action tonight. But since we've talked about this in the past, and I know there's a lot of things we talk about we never really get to do anything about, I just wonder if we could continue this discussion and maybe come up with some alternatives. And I'm not in favor of putting speed bumps in. That causes another problem, but maybe some of the things you had mentioned earlier, Andrew.
Highland Street was a big one, I believe, that
Right.
you guys have brought up quite a few times where there's actually been accidents
Right.
that have been a result of the speeding that goes on there, so.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, and it's another area where instead of elderly people, we have a lot of children playing on that street. But we mentioned crosswalk, painting, things like, I'm not sure what the other methods were. I think there was wasn't there some solar signs that you could put in, like almost permanent miles per hour signs? And I know some of these things would cost a lot of money, but some may not cost that much money.
Yeah, and those ones, the chief may know better than I on those, but I think that depending on where you're looking, they would be affordable to put in multiple areas. I think that option would. And I think when we talked about this before, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we got into the conversation about speed humps, not the bumps, but that you had to do a traffic study first. There was a process, I thought, before you did it, or was that just on our end? We wanted to make sure that it was worth taking those steps.
I believe it's council's right to install those if they want it, but there might be legal ramifications for doing that, so I have to research it again.
Yeah. And I think to your point, there was the physical things that you could do on the street, the speed humps, or kind of the psychological ones where it was the painting of the street, making the street seem more narrow so that people are slowing down. So those seem like the easy easier ones.
Yeah, the speed bumps or speed humps, I think what I worry about there is then, people don't know they're there, and then next thing you know, we have people coming before council wanting us to pay for their transmission work, right? So,
Because they sped through a zone that they shouldn't have, yeah. I know.
well, I'm not saying
No,
they'd
no.
have a legitimate claim.
I know that the issue with even Freedom, there was another accident again on Friday where someone sped through a light, I believe, and took out some poles, and so even right there, the corner of Highland and Freedom is the same situation. It was
Yeah.
brought to my attention as well, so certainly something needs to be done.
On this particular street, though, I live out that side of town, and I've never thought to cut through on that. Are we sure that it's a problem?
Yes.
I always do.
I think so, and the resident who contacted me has even stood out there for quite a long, and kind of recognizes the same cars coming through. So it's probably people on their way to work, and why, to me, I think it's counterintuitive. If I were, commuting, I would think it's faster to go through the intersection, it's not that hard to make a right turn from 14 onto 59, but
Not really.
I don't know. Trying to figure out people's logic and things like that can drive you crazy.
But I know several people have been taking that shortcut for several
Right,
years.
yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
I don't
'cause-
think it's the right turn from 14 to 59. I think it's people cutting off a Main Street down to miss turning left as well.
No.
Oh, well, yeah,
Right?
right.
Well,
Which is really gonna back you up.
it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would think getting onto 14
Would be harder.
would be harder.
Well, do you think, Bob, those two ideas around that, paint and, I don't know what crosswalks are there that you might be able to highlight.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're gonna change local people that know that trick, that know that area, because my mom used to, we went to that church there, we would just cut up there, you also have the State Highway Patrol, they're constantly cutting up that way, going, through there. I don't know, I think that's gonna be a tricky, thing, because, and then you also have the nursing home, so you have some busy things on that street. I can understand maybe some steps of slowing people down, but where that's situated, and with that being right by 14, and the connecting, their 59, local people that, have lived here forever, they know that trick. They're cutting there, if they gotta go to Mark's, they're not gonna go all the way down to the light. Why would you, when you just turn, right there by the church, and then you turn right there? It's just something that I think, people who've lived here a long time have always done, so, it's kind of I think it's gonna be a hard one to fix in that particular area, so.
It might be helpful to get some cost estimates on some of the options and take it from there. I guess I just feel uncomfortable, sort of like throwing our hands up and say, well, there's really nothing we can do.
Yeah,
And it is a topic that's come up and not just this one location.
But
Yeah.
the shortcutting, as you call it, it's a public street, you can't
Right.
stop that.
Right.
Yes.
If you wanna control speed, then
Right.
there's things that can be done to control speed. Enforcement is number one. And signage, you can put 25 speed limit signs on that stretch, you can make them flash and blink, and it's not gonna help until you enforce it. Once people know that it's not being enforced, that's the way it is. So I can get prices for flashing 25-mile-an-hour signs. They're probably $4,000 or $5,000 with the solar panels. But there might be other options that are less expensive.
The ones that flash with your speed on it, or just the ones that flash with, say, 25 miles an hour?
Well, depends what you want. They could be motion sensed, so when a car comes near, it flashes.
I'm just wondering how much the neighbors will like that one too. 'Cause then you have that,
Yeah,
somebody might
you're
not
right.
want a flashing sign in their yard, yeah.
Yeah, I think at the bare minimum, what you said, just see what the prices come out to be and
Sure.
continue the conversation.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? The next item on the agenda is the agreement with ODOT accepting the federal funding requirements. This is for the mayor to be able to sign the ODOT agreement for the paving of North Chestnut, in South Prospect.
We enter these agreements with ODOT, which allows us to construct the project. They put in their 80%, as we've already accepted. And this basically states that we have to abide by their rules and regulations for our construction management. The next item on the agenda is the same thing, so we only need to discuss one. Dominic misunderstood his task, and he put 2 tracking sheets in, but they're actually the same one.
And the estimated for 20,000 at this, or 20% at this time is the 128,000.
That's for, I believe that's for Prospect Street, Chestnut Road. Quite a bit more.
The 128 is the local share, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of one street.
That's what the tracking sheet says.
Oh, okay.
The contract is a little convoluted. It's got two different sets of percentages for each project, right?
It does. So Prospect Street, we're paying 10%. Chestnut, we're paying 20%.
Yeah.
That's because, I'll really complicate it, they threw in turnpike money. They gave us 10% of our 20%.
Nice.
I won't
But
complicate it.
the maximum they'll put out is 905,000?
Correct, yeah. What they don't know is, once we bid it, we're gonna ask for 15% more. So we did last time.
Will they give us more?
If they have it, yes, if they have it. Last year, they had it. They were begging to spend it. But we have to bid it out and show them that we need more money. And we might not, but last year we certainly did.
Any questions, comments? And we have authorization to enter into participatory legislation with ODOT,
That's the same
same contract.
legislature, yes. So we only need the one.
Any management updates?
Just a couple of comments about the discussion on the area there at Bryn Mawr. I also had some phone calls, not lately, but there was one resident that wished we would look for a light at that place. The way it's developed out there between having the city and the township and the growth that's taken place, there are a lot of entrances and exits through that area, and you do have to watch that somebody may be in the parking lot at the one grocery store that's out there, and when they see it clear one way, they're coming. And if you go at the same time, it can be problematic. But that's not enough traffic out there, I don't believe, to merit a sign with that. The other thing is, if you're looking at speed bumps, there are speed bumps and there are speed bumps, but Skeels used them this past summer to slow down traffic on their roads out there. But as soon as the weather got bad, they had to take them up because the snow plows can't function with them. They have to come out. So just by way of information.
Thank you, Mayor. And there's nothing else for streets and sidewalks. I'll adjourn this meeting at 6:14.
Start the utility committee meeting at 6:14. First thing on the agenda is Meridian and Murray Avenue Waterline Project, and I'll just say I have no details for this at all. Where it stops, where it starts, nothing was submitted to me. Nothing. And I can get something by next time from Mark Bowen, it shows here. See, bids are due in May. That's all that's here. That's I can talk to Mark and get more information for next time.
But you have information, Bob?
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Nothing was informed to me.
This is authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids for the OPWC project that you guys approved a year ago. So there's a section of water line on Murray that continues to leak that will be replaced. Majority of the work on Meridian Street is between Riddle Avenue and Hazen, and that's specifically to switch water services over to the 8-inch line and abandon the 4-inch that they're currently connected to. And then there's some work at the intersection of Harris and Sycamore. We're going to upsize the pipe on Sycamore from Harris for a few hundred feet. And then all of the hydrants will be upgraded that need to be upgraded.
Okay, then the wastewater treatment plant is looking to have a contract with CT Consultants for an assessment of the,
Are we okay to move that other thing forward, though, before you move on?
depends if Bob was finished.
No, he's good.
Okay, I didn't hear him say
On
the,
Meridian Street,
Yeah.
I put a period at the end of my thought, so yes.
okay, I didn't know that.
I'm okay with moving it forward. I just want to make sure it was on the record.
Okay, yes, I'm fine because that is an urgent, critical thing to have the water service replaced. The wastewater department is going to have CT Consultants come and do an assessment of the department just to find out what will need to be replaced in the near future and what might be able to be held off the next possibly few years or so. If it's as an expression, a big ticket item when they're finished, CT Consultants knows quite a bit about getting grants for certain things if needed and when. And hopefully, the assessment can be started next month, probably no later than April. This is very critical. That way these things can keep up and nothing can really get behind down the road.
Paul, do we have a price for that evaluation with
Uh,
CT?
The answer to that is no. There won't be, I know it'll be over 50,000. The reason I'm saying that is the price will not be defined until the assessment has been started. And it depends exactly what the evaluation of that assessment will be when they are finished.
Let me add, Paul, we went through an RFQ process, and we received four consulting firms' interest. Tim Content, Bill Brigant, Dr. Miller from the University of Akron, and I all scored, ranked, utilizing the same ranking sheet. We scored them independently, then we got together and compared notes, and CT came out ahead. They've done this type of analysis before. The reason we know the price will be, one reason we know the price will be over 50,000 is we could have just given it to CT, but we expect it to be closer to 100,000. Bill has budgeted for this in his budget over a year ago now. We meet with Portage County Water Resources tomorrow morning. In 2003, Portage County and the city modified an agreement because Portage County wanted to purchase use of our wastewater plant. Therefore, they paid for a big portion of half the upgrade, something like that. We're gonna ask them tomorrow if they're interested in the same thing here. And if so, then potentially they'll pitch in for the study. If not, then we're gonna go at it on our own as though it's our report. Board of Control will meet, and then it'll award, as with all RFQs, then we're gonna sit down with them and negotiate the price and see how much they think it's gonna cost to do the items that we've asked them to perform. So we don't know exactly what the price is. I know we're gonna keep it within what Bill has budgeted.
The only confusing part on the tracking sheet, it says the procurement process will be to advertise for bid, but it sounds like you've already gone through the bidding process.
We already have, yes.
So
That
that's
part's
not
finished.
correct.
I didn't write the tracking sheet,
Right.
so, okay,
That's fine.
correct.
But yeah, it sounds like you've already gotten to that process. At this point, you're trying to nail down the scope of the work and negotiate with the.
CT.
Yeah,
Correct.
consultants that you,
Right, so the tracking sheet should state authorize the mayor to enter contract with
right.
CT,
Okay.
correct?
And there'll be a contract before, is this being moved on for the next meeting?
We will know tomorrow where the Portage County Water Resources stands with regard to the upgrades.
But you want this to be moved forward?
I would like it to move forward, yes. And then Board of Control will meet either tomorrow or Thursday.
I'm okay with moving this forward.
Okay, good, because I believe this is extremely important to keep that department ahead of the game.
Yes.
And it's more critical than most people realize.
And we do have debt falling off from the 2004 improvements at the end of the year, which just means we have to keep rolling money back into,
The infrastructure.
yes, now we have 20-year-old infrastructure in different places.
That'll free up the money, that's right.
And at this time, I'd like to ask for a management update pertaining to these articles.
Well, Billy's been working on this project for a while, and
Yes.
it's being proactive with this. And we all know that anytime something goes wrong at the water plant or the wastewater treatment plant, it starts with six figures. So we need a good evaluation of this. It's reached a point in time, that we need to assess it and then work out a plan to keep it functioning. We're nowhere near capacity there, but there's possibilities that in the future, especially with Rutchtown's expansion, that we expect to see that go up. So we want this plant in A1 shape, and that's another argument for Portage County to jump on board, I hope, because it will benefit more than the city of Ravenna.
At 6:23, I'd like to end the utility committee meeting.
Okay, 6:23, I will call the planning committee meeting to order. We have 3 items on the agenda. The first one, this has been a long time coming, but we need to discuss how we want to move forward with the request for qualifications we had submitted a while back, the review that the Design Review Commission undertook, and their recommendation. So they met on Thursday last week, and I was at the meeting, and there were originally 3 respondents to the request for qualifications. One of them was kind of out of scope. It was way too, their quote was too high. The other 2 were interviewed, now I'm trying to remember if it was December or January, but one of the meetings was here where they, the 2 remaining consultants, Prospectus and CT Consultants, met virtually with the commission, and they were able to ask questions and give a presentation. So last Thursday, when the Design Review Commission met, their goal was to rank the 2 remaining. So there was a discussion, and in the end, they voted to rank Prospectus number 1 and CT Consultants number 2. And we had a discussion about, because if you remember, we capped the cost at $30,000. Prospectus was just a little bit under, about $27,500. And CT Consultants was right at the cap with possibly even more cost, depending upon how we wanted them to conduct certain interviews and gather certain input. So later on in the agenda, we'll talk about the CLG grant, which would work with this potentially. So there's a kind of a timing issue with getting some grant money to help pay for this. Bob did some homework regarding the CLG grant, and it was sort of determined that, and I forget who CLG is, but the person you were contacting, so just the kind of work we were really asking for was in the range of $10,000 to $15,000. So what I'm asking the committee to consider is moving forward with the idea that we can get some money, and I don't remember the actual breakdown, 60-40 I think it was, 60 from CLG and 40 from the city, and going back and seeing if we can negotiate with one of these consultants, whichever one the council picks, and seeing if they'll do the work in the range of, say, $15,000 to $20,000. And that way we would cap our commitment to, let's say, $10,000, or if you want to put a range, $10,000 to $15,000, providing that we get the grant. Am I explaining this correct?
That's
So in other
what we
words,
discussed.
we don't have to commit 30,000. But if we committed, let's say 15, just for the sake of argument, and then said, well, we're only going to commit up to that amount if we get this grant, then if we don't get the grant, everything's off the table. So we're half, at most, worst case scenario, half where we were when we started with the 30,000 threshold. Does that kind of make sense to people? Is there anything you want to add, Bob?
Well, so the second part is authorizing the application for the CLG.
Right.
Stating in the application, the city will commit our 40% being X. So that's a question for council is what is X? What is city council willing to participate toward this? Again, if we don't get the CLG grant, which would add the extra 60%, then I guess it's all off the table at that point. We'll have to come back and figure out something else.
Yeah, and so that's later on the agenda, so kind of, the first thing we need to decide in committee is which consultant we want Bob to go back to see if he can negotiate, because although the Design Review Commission ranked Perspectives 1 and CT Consultants 2, it's really up to us to pick. And I know there's maybe a couple of people in the audience want to speak to that issue. So that's the number one thing we need to decide, and then if we want to, instead of capping as we had originally done the entire work at 30,000, capping it at, say, 15, with the provision that we only commit that money if we get the grant.
How does the committee itself feel about getting a consultant, like overall? I mean, do they
Well-
feel that this is gonna, help them?
The commission?
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
So are they in favor, the majority in favor with this?
Yeah, I mean, it would be crazy for them to rank them. I mean, they didn't specifically vote on what you just said, but I wouldn't think they would rank them at all and vote not to go forward. But they do.
I mean, did they seem excited about,
Well-
I mean, I haven't attended any of the meetings. I know, Cheryl, you have. I don't know if anyone else has, but I just was curious, if we're gonna commit to this kind of funding, do the people that are on there, is this something that they feel it's gonna be a good investment for future endeavors on this?
Well, I believe we have members of DRC here that if they'd like to speak, but I can say my only input on it is I have worked with other communities with CT. They do have a great economic development background as well as historic preservation. So it's a nice balance, especially when we're dealing with our downtown historic business district. So my input with that, Perspectives I know is mostly architectural, so they're more concerned with the historic preservation and not so much with the businesses in the downtown business district. I think we do need to have a company that is going to balance that, because this is our business district. We need it to be friendly to that and also to the historic preservation. That's just my experience and input with dealing with CT. And I just hope that everybody kind of keeps that in mind as we go along. And then I'm gonna say something I've been saying like every meeting. We also have the comprehensive plan to still discuss and think about and get moving. So that's my input. Cliff, do you wanna come up?
Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
I-
I invite Cliff and if Larry wants to talk as well.
First of all, Rob's done a lot of work on this, and probably I'm the thorn in the side that caused him to have to do all the work, because when we started this thing, and I was appointed by the mayor on the Design Review Commission, probably the majority of the people on the Design Review Commission had never even looked at any of the paperwork. They had no idea what was in it, okay? Whether that was the guidelines or the actual ordinances. They had no clue, because I'd have to bring in my copy every meeting and say, do you know this is in here? Because the only thing they were interested in is paint, or we want to do it this way, or signs this way. They didn't care about anything else. So I kind of pushed it along to get some changes, along with Larry and the committee and the mayor wanted some changes. And they brought you changes. What's it been now, Rob? 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
2 years,
Two-
January 2021, I believe.
Okay, so we bought changes, there were under 10 changes in there. I mean, maybe under 8 anyway, there wasn't a lot of them, but it went back and forth, and we didn't seem to want to move it forward to deal with those changes. And then somewhere down the line, it was noted that Kent was having problems with their architectural design problem in town, and it was made note that maybe we should see who they picked, because they were looking for someone, and see who they got. Now, we got two different companies here. I guess my question is the people in council, have you, any of you ever got to read these? Okay, so basically they're gonna ask you to spend money, and you have no idea what these companies are really proposing. And Cheryl probably puts it best, is prospectus has nothing in there, and Rob will remember when I questioned them about economic development in the city, they walked all around the question, never answered it. Where CT has it right in here, that's their interest also. But I guess it comes down to, this thing started at 30,000, because that's what Kent wanted. Well, we're not Kent. We didn't need that much, and this thing has morphed into this big, they're gonna go after the law, and they're gonna go after the guidelines. And basically, we just needed some things straightened around. I think the mayor will admit this too, because he'd like to see this done, because it affects on how he can pick people for the design review. And till recently, when you guys voted to change the number of members necessary for a quorum, we were kind of handcuffed. And by the way, since that was voted in, we had to call off another meeting, because we still didn't have enough people probably going to be there. So I guess then I noticed something tonight too, that CT gave us a flash drive of what they had provided, a guideline for the project in Kent. Well, I guess I forgot that or didn't hear that. Probably didn't hear it because the
Couldn't hear anything.
nobody could hear anything that day. And again, now you have a group there that probably didn't hear it, and then what happens in our group is there's a couple people there that are professionals that they seem to lead the pack. Whatever they say goes. And that's what happened the other day again. I had somebody else say that to me. Gee, is it always like this? Well, yeah, it is kind of like that. They don't want to do anything but tell people what they can do with their property. They don't want to deal with what's good for the city other than the way it looks. They've made the statement before, we don't care about business. Those were the exact words. We don't care about business. We just are here to make it look good, to make sure it stays look good. So I guess my thought would be is, I don't think that this thing should go forward to spend money and ask you people to spend money, whether it's 15,000 or 12,000 or 30,000 or whatever it turns out to be, if you don't know what's in the paperwork for it and what these people are like. And do we really need it? Wouldn't it be best to go back to these people? We've talked about it at the meetings. And this morphed into something where they're offering things that we don't really need and really didn't ask for. Isn't that fair?
It appears that, yes, and that's what we would negotiate with them with, yes.
After we give the money, we're gonna negotiate to
No,
the fact?
we'd negotiate first, right?
The CLG has a deadline of March, beginning of March. So if we want, we have to move that forward, or we wait another year.
Right.
And if you wanna hold it off, Cliff, then we'll just continue to use our guidelines the way we have them in writing. And we're not moving forward, that's the issue. If we don't do something, we're not moving forward.
Well, I don't have any say whether it
No,
moves
and
forward or not. I'm here only to give information on what I was given, and I've read it many times. I'd like to find the flash drive, which I don't know where it is, because I don't think a lot of those people in that group.
Julie should have it. If somebody has it, Julie would have it.
Okay.
She wouldn't have thrown it away.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to look at that. I'm sure that other people here would before they make decisions, but I won't keep you any more. I'm long-winded as usual, and my real belief is on this is it was a rather simple thing, and it should have been brought to council, in my opinion. And if they didn't like what Larry and I had proposed as changes, you should have voted, okay, we're only gonna do this, 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 and this, and vote on it and be done with it. And vote in the change of the number of members necessary for quorum, and other things that the mayor or the other group done. But it's got into this big thing of now, what are you gonna do with it? It's more than that, with that. And if you go with CT, they'll take the ball and run with it. I'm sorry, with prospectus. They will take the ball and run with it, only taking care of architectural things. I read the thing again today. There's nobody in here that even talks about economic of the city. This is all architectural. So, that's it. And one other thing. You haven't seen anybody else here but me. Okay, have you ever seen anybody here else than me? Do they really damn care, other than want to tell you what you can do with your property and what kind of infringement on your property rights are? And that's just,
Thanks, Cliff, I appreciate it.
Thanks,
So,
Cliff.
so Amy, to answer your question, first of all, you know the design review is a commission, they're not a committee, so they are actually empowered to vote and make these decisions.
Right.
The vote came to, was it 4-1, I think?
It was 4 to 1.
4 to 1 in
favor of
favor of
prospectus.
prospectus.
Okay.
The time frame is of essence if we want to apply for the CLG. Would we get the CLG? We don't know until we apply.
I think it's hard for council to pick, because we
But
can't.
should the planning committee pick over the design review commission that are appointed as the people of the board? Should council overrule Board of Zoning Appeals? Should they overrule planning commission? I mean, these groups are in place
Well,
for a reason.
yeah, and that was my
Should,
thought.
I
I
think.
mean, whether or not I would have picked one or over the other, I think is a little bit moot, because I've said I'm not an expert in this area. So I'm putting aside my own personal opinions because I think they're less valuable. And we do, I mean, the mayor appoints people, the chamber appoints someone to the commission, and we do that for the purpose of gathering the right people to make those decisions.
Just like the charter.
So, yeah, so, I'm okay with ranking them the way they are with prospectus as the target for being hired as a consultant. Before we go any further, though, Larry wants to say something, so why don't you come up to the podium?
Larry Smillius, 123 North Walnut Street. I sent copies to all of council people of my prepared remarks. Before I start that, I would mention that originally, when we first started talking about this at the July 21 meeting, we were told, let's only talk about the laws, let's save the guidelines for later. And this has morphed into, let's only talk about the guidelines and forget about the laws. Now, if you choose prospectus, I fear there will be no significant benefit to Ravenna and our business district. Prospectus people are architects. Their expertise will be technical details of historic preservation. That's not the issue. It never was the issue. The issues are balancing historic preservation with economic development, common sense, and what is right for Ravenna now in the 21st century. There may be a conflict of interest since Ted Mantris has worked with Prospectus, and he is the leader of the pack, the one that said, let's get Prospectus. Cliff and I brought our concerns to council because of about 20 empty storefronts in a dying business district. CT people have the education and experience in economic development and planning to find a balance between economic development and historic preservation. I urge you to choose CT, but we should wait until they complete their engagement in Kent. We may learn more about CT. We may learn something that applies to Ravenna. The reason Kent hired a consultant is similar to our own. A lack of common sense used in some decisions of their architectural review board. Don't let Bob rush you into picking the wrong consultant to save money. Or all the time and money spent on this will be wasted. If you do hire a consultant, please choose CT. And one last thought, council should not be making choices based on what's good for the buildings. You should be making choices deciding on what is good for the people of Ravenna. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, do you have something to say?
I was gonna say, I appreciate both Cliff and Larry because, after what they said, it makes a lot of sense. We have to think a little outside the box, and even though I haven't looked at either of the two, I trust their opinion a lot because they do make an effort to come to all of our meetings to show interest. And, they were the ones that started this. So, now I'm a little, of course, more apprehensive to go with, if we were to pick, I would more than likely pick CT out of the respect and my confidence in Cliff and Larry. So.
Both companies are historic preservationalists.
But the one isn't economic development
They didn't
friendly.
address it, and I haven't asked them to present their
So-
economic development information.
I read both reports through, and I would agree, there's nothing in prospectus. You can go to their website, there's nothing that mentions any economic development experience or promotion of it. Where CT historically, like I said, I've seen firsthand some of the things that they've done in downtown areas.
And I think that's something that we, any bit of economic development help, I think is needed. So that doesn't help you any,
So,
I'm
well,
sure.
let me, just in terms of moving this along procedurally, there seems to be a diversity of opinions about who to pick as the number one recommended or ranked consultant. And this committee only has 3 members. What if we moved on to committee of the whole, the issue of that? In other words, the committee could just move on, continuing the discussion at that level if you want to continue entertaining the idea of hiring a consultant at all. And then at the committee of the whole, where more of us can vote, we can decide on the ranking. And if we don't want to go with the Design Review Commission's recommendation, that's our prerogative. But tonight, if we could just move on the issue of hiring.
I don't want to lose a grant. If there's opportunity to have any of this paid for, I don't want to lose that opportunity because, like Cheryl said, there's, you know, a comprehensive plan that, you know, is desired. You know, there's other costs that, you know, we're going to be needing money for. So, I mean, if we're able to get some of this money paid for, I don't want to lose that.
So you're okay moving it forward and letting the committee of the whole make the decision about the ranking?
I do have a question before that, though. As we are addressing and thinking about which company to pick, when we entered into this, did we have an agreed-upon procedure on how the consultant would be picked? Did we say at that time, we'll accept the recommendation of the Design Review Committee, or did we say it's going to be a straight council vote, or it's going to be Mr. Finney's recommendation to us that we're going to move forward? Now that we're here, did we anticipate and talk about that some at that time? I
Yeah.
don't recall.
We've always talked about it as a process of the Design Review Commission makes a recommendation, but we're the ultimate deciders.
Okay.
So what we're doing now, I believe, I'm just saying, instead of doing it at this level, a 3-member committee level, we do it at the larger, so we can have everyone's input.
Yeah.
So, no, we're following the
Yeah.
procedure we had discussed, and the Design Review Commission has done its work. It's reviewed the consultants, it's given us their recommendation. Like I said, I know you're kind of deferring to the people who've been here discussing the issue. I'm deferring to the experts on the Design Review Commission, but everyone gets to choose how they want to make their decision.
Yeah, and just another comment, as I recall, when we put out what we were requesting of them in the way of scope of work, it included the review of the guidelines and the ordinances, but it also included the aspect of looking at them in ways that will help and not hinder economic development. That was one of the things that we said we wanted to look at.
It's true.
So if Perspectives is willing to do that and going to do that as part of what we're asking them to do, I may lean heavily toward accepting the recommendation of the Design Review Committee and Mr. Finney in regards to who we choose on this. I just wanted to make that comment, but I am fine for it to go to Committee of the Whole to see the direction of it.
Okay, and you're okay with it? So am I. So for this item, we'll move it forward. The final decision about who gets to be picked as the highest ranked consultant will be done at the next Committee of the Whole meeting. Okay, so let's move on. In fact, what I want to do is flip the next 2 so we can put the CLG grant next, since that's related to this. So now the second component of this discussion is, you know, it seems like we're headed in that direction anyway, but are we okay with applying for the CLG grant, lowering our expectations for the cost of this project, and say capping it at $15,000 instead of $30,000, and then making that commitment to hire a consultant based on or conditional to getting the grant?
Yes.
You okay with that, Tim? Or does that make sense what I just
Yeah,
said?
it does make sense. I just go back to what we talked about at the beginning. At the beginning, we had a pretty extensive discussion that we were willing to go up to $30,000 to pay for this, that's what we thought was appropriate at that time. So I think that's backing off it a little bit, but I'm okay to cap it at 15 with if we get 15 from the grant to help us to move forward.
Okay. All right, so then we move that item forward. The next item on the agenda is the carbon monoxide detectors. That's already been up for a vote at our last regular meeting. It stayed on first reading because there were some changes that we wanted to tighten up with the actual language in Chapter 1462 and Chapter 1478. So in Chapter 14, and I don't know if you've still had, it was in the packet for the meeting earlier this month. The only thing I suggested in 1462, there was, although we made the change to the title, and in some of the sections, there's a missing mention of CO2 detectors in 1462.02, which is electrically operated devices. I guess that just means they have to be directly connected to your electrical box, no switch in between, right?
Correct.
And so I think you already sent an email that
Yeah,
you're
that's
gonna,
fine.
yeah, we're gonna add that. Then the only other thing in 1478, at the end, there are some definitions, but we didn't really structure them, you know, in the hierarchy of, you know, an paragraph with numbers. So I don't know that the rest of the council have seen that. I sent it to Bob, and you're okay with that? So we'll make these changes. It was on the move forward since it's already on the agenda. It'll be up for a second reading in March, and you'll be presented with these changes. Okay. So then the only other thing on the agenda is management update. Mayor?
Just a few comments as we try to wade through this thing with design review. I do disagree with Clifton. We usually agree, but not everybody on that commission is worthless. That's not the case. They're good people who have their own thoughts about this, and they have served the city for quite some time. And I cannot discard their contribution over that period of time. And when this was coming up for discussion, I went back through some of the paperwork that I had, and I found a letter from Jack Cole. And this was the time when Design Review was looking at extending the area of the historic district. And Jack's letter to me was very well written and hit the point. And he stressed the fact that when people buy property, which he has bought and remodeled property here in the city, the old Masonic Temple one, with that, along with others. And we've had 8 to 9 to 10 buildings in the downtown area or on the adjacent Spruce Street that have new ownership over the past 3 or 4 years. His point is that to get people to buy these, they have to be able to have a balance of looking at the historic district and seeing what they can do and try to meet it to the best of their ability. But at a certain point, they have to walk away. For example, the house at the end of Parkway, the Veterans House. That one was done to restore that house and to restore the home on the outside only was over $400,000. Now that was done with money raised by nonprofits, so they were able to put that into it. A contractor could not do that because they can't get that out of the house at that point in time. So we're in a bit of a jam in the city to meet both things that need to happen, and we definitely have to allow for economic development. I do point out every time I talk that there is a section of town that starts at Linden and the NW and goes to city limits where they never ask us for anything. And all the buildings are full. And there's tons of money that go through there every day out there. So there is another part of town where there is enterprise. So we go back to historic out there, as I remember as a kid, Gulf gas station where my grandfather worked. He ran it, took it for Dick Hubbard, who owned a lot of land out in that area when Dick went off to fight the war. I used to go out there and sit and drink knee-high pop and watch the cars come in where they pumped the gas and washed the windows for them. And then there was a truck stop. Probably the highlight out there was the restaurant that was there. Now, the gas station is still out there, and so was a restaurant, the Brown Gables. But it's down on 14, and they've been converted to houses. They moved them, and they're still in use down there. I appreciate the effort that Cliff and Larry have put into this, and they do this because they believe in it. But I also understand there has to be some balance. And to the best of my recollection, and there might be one other one, I don't know, but I know of one incident where a person had a problem and was asked to do things. It finally came to a compromise, and but it stopped their development for over a year. There is an appeal from this board, and it's the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that if you don't like how it turned out, you can take that to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm only giving this to you for a reference as you think about this situation. I was not a huge proponent of spending $30,000 on this. And the thing that I saw when I read that, they were telling us that's not enough money. It needs to be more if you want to get this done. Well, we have a defined district in the city of Ravenna. Kent has no defined district as a historic district, and that's what they're asking them to put together over there, part of what they're asking them to put together. This has been controversial from the day it passed. Ernestine Kyle was a teacher at the high school, taught business classes, and she was a proponent that worked on this to get it passed. And it passed 4-3 when they defined the district. And I looked at the arguments, and they were exactly the same as the ones that were made when we talked about expanding the district here. They were identical with that. So there's something about this that I don't want to say it's unique, but there's something inherent about it that you need to be on board one way or the other. Now, we are looking at we had Todd Peets come in and show us the houses that he took pictures of and showed them, and we're marketing that to a degree to bring people into town to see the various parts of the architecture that are available here. But once again, that's a small niche of people that follow that to the point that they will stop and look. Now we have them come, and they've done trips and walking trips and visited these places, and they've been filled. Jack Schaefer was doing those in the past, who had a big interest in this. I have interest in restoring some things that aren't downtown. I'm very concerned about the chapel at the cemetery. We need to do something with that, or it's going to be deteriorated beyond repair. So there are other things. This is a big topic. It's not something that's simply done with this. But I do think we need to be able to have a voice for both sides where it can make this a better city to be in. Easy for me to say, harder to do, but we need to work towards it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. All right, so at 7 o'clock, I will adjourn the planning committee.
At 7 PM, I will call to order the Community and Economic Development Committee. The first item on the agenda is an approval for home RLF for forgivable loan. Habitat for Humanity had acquired 413 Lincoln Street here in the city, and they had initially applied to Portage County for their funding to help with this renovation. Since it's in the city, the county then turned it back to the city and advised Habitat to approach us and through NDS to see if we had revolving loan funds that could be utilized towards this Habitat project. So the backup paperwork that I have here is what was originally submitted to Portage County. And the estimated budget for the project completion through Habitat is $180,000. Now, with that in mind, a lot of Habitat's labor and materials are done through donations and volunteer work. So what would cost $180,000 is reduced. They don't have an exact number on that, but a lot of it is volunteer and donations. With that being said, I also want to let you know that our current home RLF balance is $292,000. Home is a very restricted fund that it is only eligible for certain projects. A rehab project of a single-family residence is an eligible project, so we're fine that way. Again, the balance that we have currently is $292,000. That balance is not going to grow very much. The state has changed the financing mechanisms with the CHIP programs. The current finance mechanism on an owner-occupied rehab, which is where we gain recapture from the home funds, the state has changed it to a 5-year, 100% forgivable loan. So therefore, if the person lives in the home for 5 years and owns the home for that 5 years, the funds that they receive on a full rehab is completely forgiven. Therefore, our recapture likelihood is very minimal. So the $292,000 that we have, we will not see that build as we have in past years because the state has negated that on the programs. I do believe that this is totally a wonderful project, and Habitat runs some great programs. They help low to moderate income people, families that couldn't get into home ownership otherwise through sweat equity and volunteerism. They provide these homes. I'm concerned about trying to fund $180,000. One, their budget isn't going to come up to the $180,000. It's going to be less than that because of the donations and volunteering. I also don't want to deplete our entire home RLF, because if we ever have a year where we are not awarded a CHIP, these RLF funds can be utilized for an owner-occupied residence that is in severe need of a rehab, as long as they qualify. It's a subsidy if we don't get the CHIP funds. And like I said, once it's gone, sadly, I think it's gone. So I would like to ask the committee to consider an amount. I did ask NDS for the average owner-occupied full rehab amounts that have been done over the last couple of years. What they gave me was the last couple of CHIPs, so it takes us back to about the beginning of 2018 with the 2017 CHIP. The highest amount, and this was during COVID, when a lot of contractors weren't working and materials were not readily available. The highest one that they had was $75,000. The average owner-occupied CHIP actually runs about 50,000 for a full rehab. So in taking those numbers into consideration, what are your thoughts? Where would you like to see? I definitely want to see us move forward with something. Obviously, any amount that we are willing to grant to this program is wonderful, but I don't want to deplete our home RLF entirely.
I was thinking the same thing when you were talking, the amount seemed to be rather high. And, you know, I would be comfortable with, you know, $50,000. I would think between about 50, 55,000.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Tim?
Why are they coming to us for such a large amount? In looking at the home, it's currently a two-family home.
It's a two-family that they're converting into a single-family.
A lot of renovation.
I did take a walk through the property last week. Habitat joined me and I walked through the property. This home will need to be gutted to the studs and the foundation, rewired, replumbed, all new mechanicals. It's not a cosmetic thing. It is definitely needed. Part of the ceiling is laying on the floor.
There's also asbestos remediation.
Possible. There's, and
I think that's why
forgive me
there's-
because of my background, until it's tested,
Right.
and I have a confirmation of lead or asbestos, and mold, I typically say organic growth and not the M word unless it's proven in a test. But yes, it will need to be tested for lead and asbestos prior to any type of remediation or work even starting on it, because that will determine the type of contractual work that will need to be done. And certainly that raises their expenses, and it's the unknown. There's a lot.
And then why is Habitat coming to us when there are other sources of funding for this type of project almost exactly?
Because years ago, prior to the housing market crash, it was very common for Habitat to actually be part of the CHIP program. The city itself, I know when I was running the CHIP program, the city participated through their CHIP on several acquisition, rehab, resales. The work was done through Habitat and the funding came out of the CHIP. The county participated a lot of times in new construction projects where the CHIP funds acquired a vacant piece of property and then Habitat built the home. Well, when the housing market crash hit, pretty much all of the acquisition, rehab, resale programs, down payment assistance programs, anything with new home ownership became almost impossible to meet the deadlines of the grant programs. And Habitat back then, and it's a new regime at Habitat, I can vouch for that. But back in that time, in the mayoral contest, we had issues with Habitat being able to meet the grant deadlines and failing. And so the city or the county would take a hit on their next grant application because of the non-performance of Habitat. It is a safer outlet for them to do the RLF because there's still restrictions in things that they have to meet. We don't have the same grant deadlines and performance deadlines that we had when it was part of the CHIP. So I think this is a way for them to come back to the city. These funds can be used specifically for Habitat projects, for any home rehab project. They, like I said, applied to the county grant RLF program, and the county sent them back our way because it's in the city limits.
I would have concerns over expending more than half of the amount of money that's in the RLF at this time. Actually, way more than half of it. Although I think a reasonable amount may be what we're referring to of the average amount of the other projects that have gone forward similar to this, which seems to be in the $50,000 range. So I would be okay to look at that,
Okay.
but probably not more.
Perfect, and I agree. I didn't feel comfortable, and that's why I wanted to explain to you guys the balances and the lack of recapture that we have in the future, so that everybody knows where we stand with these funds, and I agree not to deplete them because we can use them in the future.
Are they doing that with all of the programs where they're not recoverable,
Yes.
including economic development?
No, economic development's a different, this is just the housing side.
Okay.
So the CDBG that we recapture for the home repairs and the financing mechanism that's utilized in conjunction with the home
Yeah.
on the CDBG side, anything to do with the CHIP is non-recapturable at this point. They're forgiving it. But on the economic development side, they have not done that yet.
So is it safe to say they've taken out both the R and the L from the?
Yes,
No.
yes. I can say from just the
No, it's just the fun.
my history of working within the programs and doing this, I don't agree with the non-recapture. I'm okay with a small percentage being forgiven for ownership of the home and staying in the home, because that's the
Yeah.
incentive of the program. I'm not comfortable with 100% forgiveness
So
on
will
these.
Habitat still collect the money from them, from that, the amount that is forgiven? Will they
It's
continue-
100% forgiven.
Right, 100% that we're giving, okay? So I know the people that usually get homes from them have to pay
A mortgage.
a mortgage.
That is directly to Habitat.
Okay, so that money that is, you know,
Yes.
forgiven, so they're gonna actually make out a little bit then.
Yes,
Correct.
because the money that the lien that they place on the home, once they put their family in there, gets paid back to Habitat and goes into their funds. This would be, according to the state's current finance mechanisms, we can only do a lien for the amount for up to 5 years, and it's 100% forgivable. So in NDS, I do believe they would encourage us to put that 5-year lien on, you know.
Well, a good thing it is promoting homeownership in our city. It's not gonna
And
be
it's
a rental.
And it's converting a
you know,
two-family home back to a
yes.
single-family
So
home.
I'm happy that a young, you know, a family is gonna actually be a homeowner, so that's good.
And it helps to repair an eyesore,
Yes.
so.
So Cheryl, what happens if that family leaves before 5 years is up?
It's prorated, so if they're there for 3 years, the 3 years that they are there, that amount would be forgiven, and I believe, and forgive me because my math skills, I've done it all day, I'm tired. But, so the remaining 2 years then would be due and payable upon transfer of title. So it would be part of their loan.
Assuming there's value left in the house, and there's equity in the house, that they didn't destroy it.
Yes.
Well, they're still doing the grants that we do in partnership with Streetsboro and Portage County.
Yes, they're still running the CHIP program, yes. It is still very active and actually, from what I understand, moving along quite well for the last round. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Tim and Amy, you guys okay with moving that forward then?
Yes.
Thank you, and we'll move it forward at the 50,000? Correct, okay. And the next thing on the agenda is, just wanted to have a discussion, as we promised, when we approved the DORA, that we would review and ask questions and concerns, comments. I just kind of want to hear, and I know Andrew wants to hear, the good, the bad, the ugly. But we want to hear the great, too.
Yeah, and
So,
Harrison's here, so perfect timing that you're here too. But Chiefs, I don't know, I asked you before the meeting, but can you just, have you had any issues with the DORA specifically?
No.
Since this,
perfect, awesome. good to hear that. Has anyone had any complaints or anything over the last several months?
I haven't heard any complaints to me personally.
Mm-mm.
And, you know, actually, it's all been positive.
Yeah,
It didn't really seem to be used as much as I actually thought it would be used.
I think it'll still catch on. I think it still
Yeah.
needs to,
Still young.
yeah.
Do we have any numbers on how many bands have been sold?
Do you have that off the top of your head, Harrison? I don't, yeah.
Because it's just the two establishments that are selling them, right?
3.
Oh, it's three.
Three.
Three
Well,
establishments.
3 are approved, whether or not, I know that for sure the 2 are doing it. I've seen and,
Yeah, no, I've gone to all three.
Okay.
So I've utilized.
Okay.
I say I haven't gone to the one.
I think part of a review would include how much it's being utilized, so I'd be interested in those numbers.
Mayor, do you have anything on it?
Well, I think you'll have to wait till summer, when some of these events are going on to get the true flavor of it.
I think now it was an idea of, before getting in the review, and I agree that summer, after Balloon Affair, really will get a good idea of who's utilizing it.
I think Midnight Madness, there was quite a few people as
Yeah.
well walking around with it.
But right now, as we head into those summer months coming up, is there anything we should do to change? Is there any suggested changes? Right now, this is just discussion that I wanted to bring up, because we said we would take it up in the February, March timeframe as a discussion, so just wanted to add it, so. Cheryl, thanks for letting me add that. And I will add on the last one, I grew up right across the street, 416 Lincoln Avenue, so I'm excited to see that house actually be rehabbed, so.
Yeah, and if any of you want to see some, I did take some pictures as I tiptoed through.
How long has it been sitting there?
I couldn't even tell you. My first reaction, I've done a lot of these, but my first reaction to the project manager for Habitat when I stepped in was, you're not demoing this? It was-
Well, that's what the
So-
land bank typically.
But the bones are strong.
I saw it in
The
2013
bones are
or
strong.
something.
So I thank you guys for listening to that, and I will definitely, anyone on my phone after the meeting, if any of you want to see the interior photos and stuff that I got, I took a few, I'd be more than happy to share them. All right, with that being said, is there any management update for community and economic development?
I think we're good.
Okay. I will adjourn this meeting at 7:18.
Okay, 7:19, I'll call Public Health and Safety Committee meeting to order. I have several items on the agenda this evening. First item, it looks like all of them are actually going to be with our fire chief tonight. First one is the SAFER grant. This is through FEMA for hiring additional personnel. This is the one that we didn't get the last time, correct? And did we not already give you approval to apply or to go for to start the process from?
Tabled it to,
It was tabled, okay.
actually, the grant opened today, this afternoon.
Okay. So you're asking us that you go ahead with the same process to apply for this grant, and it was for 3 still?
Well, that's my question, because,
That's what it was last time?
correct. So we had, last year when we discussed this, we asked it what we were gonna do if we did not get the grant. So I could apply for 3, but what happens if we don't get it again?
Well, that would be a discussion that you would have to talk.
I just don't wanna keep drilling for oil in the same hole,
Right.
the same outcome, and we're just wasting time.
It's up to, I mean, it's ultimately up to where the budget is, where people, I mean, right now, we're talking about the grant. So that other conversation about you're wanting additional manpower, that's a completely different topic, I would say.
Well, it kind of goes hand in hand, because if we apply for it and it takes 9 months to get back, that puts us 9 months behind where we're at currently. So the grant is, if we do apply for it, how many personnel are we gonna apply for?
Have you had any previous conversation about that with the mayor or with Heather?
A little bit, but a lot of it was also, we gotta wait to see how things happen financially with contracts and finances. They had bearings on this stuff.
Is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, we discussed this last year, that the more, like if you ask for 3, you have a better chance than if you ask for 2 positions.
The rule of thumb was
Right.
at least 10%, so a minimum of 2.
But I thought there
They
would
want,
be,
they want 10% of what your current staffing is.
and that's 2, not 3, isn't it, in
Well,
between?
10% would be 2, because we're at 20, roughly, we're at 19%.
Oh,
So
okay.
at 1.9.
But you have 3 shifts. I mean,
Correct.
in my, you,
Correct.
I'm
So
on the
you
outside.
need 1 person per shift.
Yeah, a minimum.
Correct.
If we're applying for this, it doesn't make sense in my head, so you correct me if I'm wrong. Why would you apply for 2 if you have 3 shifts?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's why, right off the bat, I assumed 3, because that's where we were last year, was 3. I don't know how many, people you have leaving, how many, I don't even know.
This isn't to replace.
Well,
This is
at
in
one point it
addition
was,
to.
because you had people leaving.
No,
But
it was never to replace. The SAFER grant is not to replace personnel you have. It's
But
in
wasn't it the
addition.
part of it to start training some of these individuals, because it would help get the people ready, because some of the people were gonna be leaving and you'd be that much ahead? I mean, I'm okay with.
Yes, in
I
one
remember that
aspect, in one
conversation.
aspect, yes, but ultimately, we would have to change our ordinance to 21 personnel, not 18. Well, actually, 22 personnel, not 19.
Okay,
So increase the ordinance.
Correct.
so, actually, yeah, so, I mean, this is something like completely different than how it's, like, right now, it's to apply. We have that on the agenda, and it's to apply for the SAFER grant. So, right, we'll get to that other topic in a minute, but if you want us to give you the okay to apply for this grant, correct? Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Rob?
Yeah, I think we should apply for the grant. I'm not sure what the alternative is. And I know it's tricky. I mean, if we committed, regardless of the grant, to hiring 3 people, I think that diminishes our chances of getting the grant. Because the grant authorizing agency wants to help us. If we're already gonna help ourselves, then I'm not sure it helps. I think I used the word help too many times. But I am all for the grant, and I think I agree with 3.
Okay.
So that's where I am.
So the other that you're talking about is a completely, that's something I don't think goes with the SAFER grant. That's a whole nother topic that we need to talk about, obviously with the administration, with Heather, and increasing that, correct? I mean, you can't, it's a need that, if you need, that's something that I think we need more information about, knowing, what your numbers are, knowing how many more you need. You can't just kind of throw that in there as part of the grant and say, well, I need this, and this is, we gotta change this to this many numbers, and this isn't helping the problem, without the information, to back that up.
But we did discuss all this a year ago at the same time when we applied for it last year. We discussed the need, and then the question came out, what happens when we don't get it going into 22 at the end of 2022?
Okay. Where did
That's-
that ever come, but.
That was in the council meeting last February when we discussed this whole application process before.
But where did that leave off, though, as far as, leaving with the administration? Did you guys talk about?
We have talked about this to exhaustion
Okay,
with that. And I'm not in a position until we get the next item settled to even discuss it.
okay.
And then we have to see how the flow of money goes with that.
What number are we at now?
18.
far as-
well,
So we're at
19
18 firemen right
We're at
Nineteen.
19.
With-
Plus the fire marshal.
No,
Yeah.
we're at 18 plus farmers, so
Yeah.
19 total.
Okay, so we are currently at 18,
Yes. We also added a secretary full-time.
right?
Yeah, we added the secretary and fire marshal this year.
So we're at 18 with a fire marshal, and then,
19 with the
19
fire
with the
marshal.
fire.
so it's 19. And then we have the chief, and then we have the secretary. And is she full-time?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so at least got a little bit of information there. So am I understanding this whole topic is gonna be talked about maybe in next month's committee? I mean, we're not at a point to get into this too much now of where we are with this, because I don't have really a lot of information in front of me. I don't know numbers. I mean, because I think this council is gonna want numbers
Well,
and
I can
everything
tell
else.
you right now, you're looking at, to hire three, it's close to $400,000.
A year.
That's a lot of money. Now, I'm not saying that we don't, but of course, we came through this when we were running with four. And we promised we'd get that reinstated, and we reinstated as quickly as we got the funds. But we did everything like we were poor, and consequently, we're financially in a decent spot right now. But there are still some unknowns that could happen that could change that. Now, we don't make our decisions based on possible unknowns. And I understand why they want the extra people, but we've kicked it up to 6 from 4. And we need to have more discussion. Now, the chief and I talked today, and he's made contact with the person who evaluated these things and is willing to give him advice on why we failed in the past. So I'm hoping that we put this together and they come. And keep in mind, when they do come, after 3 years, we pay for them. If we go hire 3 now, have the grant, you're talking 6.
Right.
And that you're gonna be paying for. I'd have to do a lot of thinking and investigation to see what that would do to us.
Okay.
We are providing a good service. We've got good people, including the chief. We've got very good people, and he's sticking up for his people. I don't have a problem with that. He and I talk regularly. But I'm still in the mode that you have to be careful with the funds that we have, because we do not want to go backwards. And then you're talking, when this happened in the last time, then you get into layoffs or not replacing people when people retire or move. We've been down that road. I'm not going down that road again.
I understand. So,
Move this on.
we'll move this particular item on, chief, okay? And then we'll keep the other item in discussion then with you and the mayor, and when it's ready to come to talk to me, to bring to committee, let me know, okay?
Okay.
Do we want to get this on the special though, so we can get it approved next meeting? Because they're gonna have a special meeting next,
The deadline, St. Patrick's Day.
so you don't care if it's approved in.
Well,
If we're gonna have a special.
that's
we
a month
should do
away.
it.
It's only a month away.
Yeah. so,
Yeah, I think
It's
we
a
could.
very involved grant,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last time it took me 80 hours
Yeah.
plus to write the grant.
Yeah.
Yes, I have narratives, but obviously my narratives weren't sufficient enough.
And
So
Heather helped you
therefore,
some
they
on
need a
that
lot of
too.
work.
It's whatever you want, it's gonna, I mean, is it okay to have it up for March?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
actually, like I said, the grant just opened today. I just wrote 5 grants in the last 2 weeks. I don't even know what the notice of funding opportunity, what the NOFA language is. So last year, it was at 3 years, no retainment clause. I don't know if that's the same clause this year or not. It probably is, but I don't want to speculate and tell you something that I'm not sure of, because I haven't had a chance to even look at the grant. It just opened this
So
morning.
probably
I
March
understand.
is better than, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, I was just
Okay.
asking the question.
all right, next item is the Ohio EMS grant, and that is equipment?
That's for EMS equipment.
Okay, is there a match?
No.
And how much are we,
Typically, well, last year we got the 9, but typically we usually get about 3,500 bucks. last year they denied us based on monies coming in off of seatbelt violations. That's how it's funded. And they said with COVID and whatnot, the seatbelt violations numbers have decreased, so they were more selective of who they were awarding the grant to.
Okay.
Maybe this year, with the scare of COVID being a little more relaxed, so to speak, that the funding is up, and then we'll be a recipient.
Okay. Next item, are you okay to move that forward? Okay. Safety intervention grant. Question, is this related to the BWC firefighters exposure to element grant? Are they two
No.
separate?
No, there's actually 2 BWC grants we applied for right now.
Okay, so the safety intervention grant, that is
It has to
separate?
do with the state fire marshal's office.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, the safety intervention grant, yes, that is through
The BWC? Okay, that's what I thought, I just wanted, so they're
Yes.
together, correct?
yes.
Okay, what exactly are they?
So the safety intervention grant, this one is, this one we applied for, a Lucas and 2 stair chairs. So our their matching is a 3-to-1. So roughly we applied for $22,000 in funding.
Okay, and that goes along, then the BWC firefighter exposure, that is in partnership,
The
so.
firefighter exposure grant, we were awarded that in 2018, so that's a one-time, lifetime grant. The max you can get is $15,000. In 2018, we got through $13,700. So that left us roughly $1,300-ish left in the lifetime of the grant. The only thing that we can buy out of that grant, if we were to be a recipient of it, would be Nomex hoods for firefighting and gloves. So I'm applying for the remainder of that lifetime grant.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Okay,
Moving forward.
all right. And so the management update, we kind of talked about that a little bit, I think, in the beginning, understanding that there's a need for additional men there. And so that is something that I guess they'll take a closer look at and see where we are at some point here. Any other thing going on with you?
Just had a thing happen today, and I don't know, I haven't had a chance to talk to the lady, but they left a message for me. I did try to reach him. The gal that is running Coleman, they had an office across the street, and they are moving out of that office. I don't know, I wanted to talk to her to see whether they're moving out to the hospital. Now, that doesn't mean that the tenants there and the Bean and the Baker are leaving. They're staying, but there is an office over there. And I know that they're planning an expansion out by the hospital for a long-term rehab situation out there, and maybe that's where they're moving this office to, I don't know. But I will find out tomorrow, but I thought you should be aware, and because I don't know whether that will have any effect on how we deal with problems downtown or not, but I'm gonna find out tomorrow. I don't believe that's the case, but I wanna hear it.
Chief, is there any management update that you want to share, or anything? You guys have had a lot of fires, it seems. Another fire not too long ago.
Actually, they had an incident at the Woodlands last night. They had, in the storage room where computer IT stuff was at, one of the outlets arced, caught some of the paper products in there on fire. The sprinkler had pretty much extinguished it, but there was a lot of water damage, a lot of damage that was done there.
Yeah, and then you had the one on Cleveland Road too lately.
Yeah, that was a few weeks ago, a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you guys have had your hands full of fires, it seems.
It's been a busy couple weeks.
Yeah, thank you for all you guys have, both of you have done, so.
Welcome.
And all the grants, you definitely have to say the fire department has been bringing in lots of grants, so,
I think, well, this will be 6.
thank you. All right, anything else? Okay, I will adjourn at 7:35.
Well, aren't you doing the trash?
Is that- Oh, that's off, okay.
Took it off.
Okay.
Tonight, for the Personnel Committee, we have several items that are going to be addressed in executive session. And before the committee meeting is even called to order, I need to take a break and talk with the mayor for just a minute. So we're going to start the committee meeting in just a minute. But it'll be an executive session.
Does that require Was it all?
All encompassing.
Yeah, I'll go get it.
I don't know if she wants to talk to you only, or if you want me there.
No, I'm not gonna talk to him. He wants to talk to me.
And tonight we have a number of items that we're going to be discussing, and I'm recommending an executive session to discuss those.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the compensation of public employees and a negotiation update.
You'll have to second.
Second. Oh, Matt's not here, yeah.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?